To Kegel or not to Kegel? It is such a hotly debated topic at the moment and something that is really good to understand. So let's just go into this and see why there is such a debate. With a Kegel, it doesn't really prepare you for a functional movement. Now, we don't just sit there and stop pee or stand there and stop gas. Well, we might if we're in an elevator, but that is not the movement that we do with our pelvic floor, or not the sole movement we do with our pelvic floor. So have a think about your pelvic floor. So let's just say these are my pelvic floor muscles and these are my legs, okay? So here are my legs and here's my pelvic floor muscles. Now what happens if I'm walking, right? If I'm walking, my leg extends and goes forward. So look what happens to our pelvic floor when we're walking. It moves. Look what happens with our pelvic floor if we push our leg out to the side and back in. It moves. All of the muscles around our hips, our glutes, our inner thighs, above our pelvic floor, so our core, all works in conjunction with our pelvic floor. So if you just start isolating your pelvic floor with a Kegel, it doesn't incorporate the rest of the muscles, which means your pelvic floor may not be functional. So what's going to happen when you step off the curb or when you go for a run? Your pelvic floor isn't thinking Kegel, Kegel, Kegel. It's thinking, how do I integrate my pelvic floor muscles with my glutes, with my external rotators, with my inner thighs? Everything needs to work in conjunction with each other, which is why Kegels, whilst they will help you strengthen your pelvic floor if it is overly loose, is not a functional movement for you to get a functional pelvic floor to be able to do everyday activities. Okay, so I hope you understand that. So now let's have a think about the Kegel and how we can make it functional. So to start with, you need to think about, why are we doing a Kegel? So for those of you who have a loose and weak pelvic floor, then you may want to do Kegels in the traditional sense in order to strengthen your pelvic floor. So it's really important that you can think Kegel, and when I say Kegel, I mean pull the pubis and the coccyx bone together and then lift up. Now there are many cues for this. One could be stopping pee, stopping gas at the same time. One could be, I've heard, like pulling or sucking up a marble. But the key is that you have the front and the back of the pelvic floor. So if you think about it and you think about pulling the pubis towards the coccyx and then lifting, then you're going to get that front and back of the pelvic floor working together. So that's what a Kegel is. And what you need to be able to do is to be able to pull that pubis to the coccyx and lift and then fully relax again. So lift and relax, lift and relax. And that is the start of a Kegel, and a purely just what people would say do at the traffic light. That's a Kegel. Now the next step in that is, because your pelvic floor is both a fast twitch and a long endurance muscle, more so an endurance muscle than fast twitch, because think about it, it's holding your bladder and everything up all the time, so it's going to be more of an endurance muscle. You need to be able to do that Kegel, so bringing the coccyx or the pubis towards the coccyx and lift, and then hold it for 10 plus seconds in order to build that endurance. Now you may not be able to do that to start with. You may only be able to do it for 1 second or 2 seconds until you have to release it and relax again. But that's what you're building up to. So you're going to be working on fast pulling up and relax, up and relax. And then you're going to also be working on pulling up and holding to get that endurance part of your Kegel and relaxing. Now, those exercises are to help you strengthen your pelvic floor. Okay, so anything, think of it like any other muscle, you need to initially start isolating and strengthening. Now, what you will want to bring in after you do that is to make it functional, because you're not just going to be doing that Kegel and holding it, because as we all know, a tight muscle is a weak muscle, and we don't want to hold that pelvic floor up all the time. Otherwise, you end up with an overly tight, still weak, pelvic floor, which can also cause leaking. And this is why if you already have a tight pelvic floor, Kegels are not the thing to do and will actually make your pelvic floor worse, which is why telling every postpartum woman to do Kegels is such a bad idea. Because if you're already tight, then doing Kegels, so think lift and relax, or lift and hold, is going to make it tighter. And we do not want a tight pelvic floor. We want a functional pelvic floor. So after we have done the working out whether you are overly loose or overly tight, if you're overly loose and you need some muscle strength, then you'll do Kegels. Otherwise, you're wanting to work it as a functional movement. And to start that functional movement is to start doing the Kegel with the breathing. So that means the inhale and relax, exhale, think pubis to coccyx and up. Inhale, relax, exhale, pubic to coccyx, up and relax. And then you're going to start doing the same thing with squats or ball squeezes or inner thigh work. And you're going to be working the pelvic floor as an exercise with functional movements that you do day to day, because that means your pelvic floor will react in the right way when you do have to step off the curb or jump on the trampoline, or suddenly your little toddler goes running off and you have to sprint after them, because you know that never happens. But that's what the key is. Kegels will not help you with those movements, but it will strengthen your pelvic floor if your pelvic floor muscles need strengthening. Okay, so I hope I cleared up the difference between a Kegel and a functional movement or breathing, where you will still cue a Kegel, but it's with the breath, versus a Kegel is just cued as moving my pelvic floor up and relaxing, up and relaxing. Now, I'd also note that with the exhale, a long exhale, moving your pelvic floor up, you will get a higher lift of the pelvic floor with that exhale, because your TVAs and your external abs, so your rectus abdominis, will also pull up the pelvic floor as well. All right, so let me know if you have any questions on that. Those of you who have really weak pelvic floors will be doing Kegels and breathing exercises. Those of you who have a tight pelvic floor will not be doing Kegels on their own, but instead working those functional movements, relaxing the pelvic floor, and then working it with the breath so that it doesn't get overly tight again.